Hello. Thanks for coming back. Thanks. This is the final. This is the final panel, the final session of the first, not the only, as the new badges hot off the press say, the British Popular Cultures Conference. I'm exhausted, but it's been an absolute thrill to do this for the last 3 days. And it's nice to see so many people here for this final panel. This final panel is kind of one of the things we really wanted to do when we sort of had this idea for the public day. Part of this, the ethos of the conference was to engage in public spaces with the people who are involved in local, regional, popular culture. Not to just sit in a lecture room and talk about it in an abstract way, but to actually be here. So massive thank you to Jake and the team here at the Cornish Bank, especially today, who've made us feel so welcome and sort of hosted this. Huge thanks to Ed and the team from the Poly for just being the usual tech issues and kind of things, and just the willingness to just help us out with sending us, getting HDMI cable or because ours didn't work, Wi-Fi. Again, just this feeling of community that we think and feel is here, and I wanted to talk about, and Pat has just arrived with the badges which he's made for us. So yeah, I'm really grateful to you all for being here and to have this conversation, which is really about audiences and your engagement with them, and then how you kind of engage with them. So I've sort of got questions for everyone, and then sort of hopefully have a little bit of a sort of round discussion. I could start with you, Ed, in terms of the Poly. I sort of said to you earlier, like there's a Cornish audience, because there are Cornish people who come out stuff, but there's also the audience in Cornwall, and this idea of a kind of a culture that happens in Cornwall, but then also a Cornish culture. Poly's been going for a very long time, and arguably plays a very central role in all of that stuff. So can you sort of start with sort of the way you sort of think about your audiences in different ways, and do you think of those things that I've said as real, or just kind of like, again, kind of a distance thing that isn't actually real in terms of your day to day?
Well, I think when it comes to Falmouth, is quite unusual in Cornwall itself, because I think because of the university, because of the port, you've got a lot of different groups. You've got sort of transient population, you've got a fixed population, you've got people that are here for a section of sort of 3 or 4 years as a student, and you've got people that come and just here in the summer, you've got people that are here for a few weeks if they're working on a ship, or might be here for a few months or years if they're on one of the naval ships. So there's also different types of audience, I think, which maybe is not representative of wider Cornwall. And then you've got sort of the sort of local communities that are here all the time as well. So it's sort of trying to program things that are hitting all those different groups as well, and engaging all these different sections, if that makes sense.
Does that affect how you approach your calendar in terms of like when you're going to try and get certain things on?
Definitely, because the population changes so much throughout the year. Obviously, you've got at the start of the year, so January, February, you've got students returning just after Christmas. In January, no one's got any money, but by sort of February, March, you've got terrible weather, everyone wants to go out and do something. It's too bad to go and sit on the beach, so let's go and sit inside and come to an event. Then you're sort of hitting towards the end of, you're sort of into Easter, you start to get the sort of Easter crowd, so you've got visitors coming over Easter. A lot of the locals go away because they like to avoid the visitors coming in over Easter. Then you've got towards May, all the students are finishing, they're off, so they're disappearing by the end of June. So then you've got your sort of summer crowd of people that are maybe just coming for the summer, or they're summering in Falmouth. And then you sort of hit September, end of September, you've got your freshers coming in, you've got the students coming back, and then you've got, again, because the weather is getting worse, everyone wants to come and sit inside again. So it's really, I think the two factors are the groups of people that are coming in and out of the town throughout the year, and the weather as well.
Cool. Yeah, and I want to come back to this idea of like who's watching that stuff, and how you're creating a space for a general popular audience, but then also a regional audience in terms of the work that you're putting on by people from Cornwall and Falmouth. But Jake, just in terms of like the Cornish Bank and what you're trying to build here, how do you think about what you're trying to do? Because obviously it is a venue, but it feels like it's not just a venue. So what's your kind of approach to community scene and just what the project is?
So I think we are a community interest company, and we call ourselves a community arts and music venue. I think really what we want to be is a place for the community in all kind of senses, and whatever that means is a loose term. But I think then, whatever people want to bring to it, because we obviously program a lot of gigs, but we want the space to be used by budding event promoters to put on the kind of music that they want to listen to, even if, and especially if it's not the kind of music that particularly I like or Will likes, who does the booking as well. So I think for that, and ideally as a space where people are meeting each other and having different opinions and having discussions and stuff like this. I think really the sky's the limit for the type of stuff we want to have in here. But I think ultimately our kind of base is music. It's grassroots music. It's bands that are maybe on the way to being established, or they're just starting out somewhere in that region.
And it seems like it's important to connect that as it's happening locally with trying to get people who are also in that space, but sort of nationally, and sort of merging those two things.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important for us I think it's helpful for the local scene in a lot of ways to have artists come nationally. I think, there's the benefit of us all being able to see music that, we hear on the radio and that we like, but I think there's, two things. If a band supports them and often making connections through that, but also I think that a lot of the music that we have here, music of the world really, of all different types and from all different places. I think for me, I find that really personally inspiring for the kind of, music that I create, and I think that, that kind of thing hopefully takes into the local musicians and the local scenes. And I think that we see that in the absolutely massive amount of talent that we see in the town that was already here before the bank opened 4 years ago. It's really thriving, and thanks to a lot of places. And I think we want to be a part of that.
Great, thank you. So Pat, you've got kind of two film hats really. So you've got your film distribution company 606,
Yeah.
and then you've got Pat's Film Club, which takes place at predominantly at the Plaza in Truro, but also special events in different places.
Yeah, I've had a couple of shows here at the Poly, and also Merlin got on board for a couple of shows, so I've played not just in Cornwall even. I mean, we have basically played the entire Merlin circuit. So
Yes.
we had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre playing in Thurso and Ayr and Redcar, and places that I have never been. So it was great. But yeah.
And also places that not traditionally necessarily where you'd expect touring film club events to happen, which I think is really interesting. Can you just talk about how you kind of how you approach your programming? Because I know that you're a cinephile, so when you're buying films to show, there's stuff that you really want audiences to engage with, and from your sort of love of cinema, but they're not necessarily going to be the things that are going to make it a going concern. So how you balance what you're buying in terms of trying to introduce stuff, but also being aware of what's going to bring people through the door, like a Terminator double bill is going to do that very well.
Yeah, I mean with my two hats, so 606 distribution came about in 2018 when I saw a film in Cannes that I just fell in love with. I've got a background as an actor and filmmaker, and I used to go to Cannes just for fun, really, actually. And I saw a film that I just fell in love with, and my flatmate in Cannes at the time just went, you haven't stopped talking about this film. What are you doing? What do you want to do with it? I said, I don't know. Put an offer in, try and pick it up, and lo and behold, I became a film distributor. I went to an event where somebody went, so you just decided to be a distributor, did you? And I went, yeah. She goes, I didn't know that was a thing. And I went, no, did I? And in fact, I kind of regret it somehow. If I'd had a bigger business brain, it might have helped. But I mean, basically, I come at it from the perspective of good stories, well told, that have an emotional resonance. That's the thing. And obviously, those sorts of things don't necessarily make money. And I thought I saw a gap in the market, because I mean, basically I think with film and as exhibitors, I'm sure that it's got perspective on this as well, but I think audience perceptions of what world cinema is has changed in about the last 15 years or so. I remember around 2000-ish, 2005-ish, multiplexes would be playing French films, and they'd be playing, you know, international movies, thrillers, comedies, whatever, and that suddenly stopped. And, you know, all the distributors go, it's because the audiences don't want to come anymore to see that type of film. I don't think so. I think it's because they've started choosing films to bring to the UK that, I mean, my general perception is that a lot of audiences think international cinema is dark, gloomy, depressing, you know, you come out not having had a good time, really. And I think that's something that I've been guilty of in my selection of films for 606, in that a lot of my films are about damaged children. and I'm deliberately trying to move away from that into more kind of just having a good night out.
And that's found by the film club, isn't it?
And that's what Pat's Film Club has really influenced that. Because, you know, post-COVID, audiences weren't necessarily coming back to the cinemas. And I'd always had this idea that I wanted to share. I mean, it's all about sharing great films with people. That's what I've been doing it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, when I was doing my A-levels, I used to have movie nights at my house for all my mates, and we'd watch movies all night and stuff. And it's really just an extension of that. I want to help people to either recapture films, like we're doing Close Encounters of the Third Kind tomorrow night, you know, the chance to see that on a big screen with an appreciative audience. A lot of people who've never seen it on a big screen before.
Yeah.
There's something about that experience of being in a room, in the dark, together, having an experience, and that's really what I'm trying to do, really.
I do want to come back to that, because I think that's what is there's a very common thread here this weekend, but also in what you do. Without sort of getting too negative, I want to talk about the challenges of that for each of you in terms of your audiences and maintaining your audiences, and what the specific challenges are. Be that, you know, Falmouth's very weird calendar in terms of what the, you know, that sort of cycling of audiences and just those, yeah. What are the specific challenges for each of you in terms of building and maintaining an audience? Do you want to start, Pat, and then we'll go down that?
Yeah. I mean, in a way, out of the three of us, I'm in a very odd position because I don't run a venue. So I'm actually dependent upon the relationships I build with people like Ed, or with Beth, or with Mark Williams from WCW, or Craig at Merlin. I have to build a relationship where, you know, you guys can trust me to get people through the door. It's a bit like being an event promoter in that, well, it is basically event promotion, really, isn't it? And I've been very fortunate in that the guys at WCW just went, yeah, it sounds like a great idea, Pat, go for it. And they've actually totally supported me over the last, it's come up to 3 years now.
Yeah.
And, you know, initially we were having like 25 people come through the door for stuff, and I was a bit, you know, I was a bit like not making any money, might make a bit of a loss, but they actually took a long-term view of it, which was great because, you know, I don't know how I managed to engender that amount of trust. But now we've got 60, 70, 80 people coming to every show I put on.
Yeah.
And of course I've also deliberately tried to do my programming to put on stuff that is going to sell out. Like we did 2001: A Space Odyssey and it sold out. And, you know, considering I've got no marketing budget, you know, it's been going very well, and it's built up now to this nice regular audience. But at least every film makes a profit. Maybe not a big one, but every film makes a profit pretty much. But yeah, I've been working quite hard on audience development in that I've really been taking audience surveys, I've been listening to conversations, having conversations with people as they come in the door. And in fact, when I did my survey last year, one of the questions was, how welcome do I make you feel? You know, when you come in the door, how welcome do you feel? Do you feel that I care that you're here? You know, that kind of thing.
That's really important.
Well, it is, you know, because ultimately, this is me trying to make friends. But yeah.
We'll come back to the
yeah,
motivations
please do,
while you'll do
of course.
Yeah, Ed, please. Yeah.
Well, I think there's what Pat sort of touched on is, I think, caring about the experience people have, and caring about the people that come in, and caring about the work you're putting on, I think is a huge part of it, because that's why we're all doing what we're doing. We're certainly not doing it to make money, because we've been banking, right? Yeah, so I think caring about it. When an event really works for the Poly, is when we're able to buy into someone. We can work with someone that brings along their own community. So it might be someone who's got a following already, or it's like Pat has. You've got a community that's built up, it's sort of following, and then that's combined with the community that is following the poly already, and that we're building up slowly. So it's when those two things work in synchronicity, that's when it works best for us.
And what are the challenges, like, because that seems like that would be great if that happened all the time, but that can't happen all the time. So what's the other side of that coin?
Well, I think the challenges are many, but I think part of it is about how we communicate everything we're programming with a very, very small marketing budget. I think audiences have got very bad at, before COVID and going back further, I think people were much more aware, or at least more active in finding out what was going on around them. They, go to the What's On pages in the local paper, find out what's happening next week. And I think possibly because of reliance on social media, people have got out of that habit. People expect all that information to be zapped into their brain, and finding ways to zap into their brain, I think, is really challenging, particularly when, like the poly, because we've got so many different strings to our bow. So we have pottery, we have galleries, we have all these different veins. I think communicating what is actually happening, and sometimes there's so much happening, cutting through to the community that we know want to come to a particular event can be challenging. So trying to think creatively how we get that message across can be difficult.
Yeah, interesting. And then maybe not having the marketing budget to get into the algorithm, so that you can just always be in spaces.
For example, not necessarily a poly example, but I remember sort of 10, 15 years ago, when I wanted to go and see some live music, I went to my local paper, I looked in the What's On guide, and was like, right, this is what's on this month, great, I'll go to that. That local paper no longer does a What's On guide because they decided that's not profitable. It was the only reason I ever picked up that local paper, but they've now taken that out. So it's sort of, and then I think there's become a reliance on social media where you say, I'll know about it because I follow them on social media. But more and more, because the algorithm is now no longer driven by that, the algorithm is driven by what money people are putting into that advertisement. People aren't seeing the things that they thought they'd see because they're following that person.
Yeah, and then it's like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's like with your, if you've got a Facebook page, I think it's something like 4% of your followers see a post that you do. And that's because of the algorithm.
Unless you're putting money into
unless you're paying for ads, yeah.
And in terms of general kind of problems, just I think money across the board really, which is the common thing. But yeah, I think for us, we've been operating for as a loss for quite a while. We've just, with the beer garden now and the pub which we've just kind of opened, it looks like, fingers crossed, we might start to break even soon. But yeah, I think that similarly to, I think that nationwide there's a real problem with grassroots music venues shutting all over the place, and I think there's only 700 left nationally. Don't quote me exactly on that. I'm pretty sure it's 700. But they're closing quite rapidly, and I think generally it's just across the board that it doesn't actually add up. The numbers don't really add up. If you have people coming through the door, like the tickets, and once you've paid all the costs, it just never quite actually goes into the positive across the board. And I think a lot of that is rising costs and things like that. But I think there is something that people like the Music Venues Trust are working really hard at trying to find a solution that really works nationwide. But yeah, I think generally it's kind of not having enough money to really have enough people in our team. I think as anyone probably in the arts kind of probably also feels, but yeah, just a lot of hard work and not really the resources in order to do things the proper way. So it has to be a bit cowboy.
Bit cowboy, nice. Yeah. Is there a kind of sort of a response that feels sort of local? Because do get the sense that you mentioned it in terms of going to a cinema and saying, I want to do this thing, and they're like, and it doesn't. This might not, it doesn't feel competitive. It feels like everybody knows we're in the same boat, and we're all trying to do something from that. Like you said, that place of we love this, we want this to work, we want this to be a thing. Does that feel like on the ground that there's this kind of sense of a kind of popular culture community that, you know, is supportive of each other, even if it's just a kind of like, you know, solidarity of we're all sort of pulling in the same direction?
I think so. I'm a bit of a loner as a person, so I find it quite difficult to network and communicate. But I do get a sense that, you know, we all try to look out for each other. Like I deliberately would never try and put anything on to compete with Ed or with the guys at Newlyn or, you know, the other indie venues. I'd never do that, because to me it's all about we're in it together. I remember I'm doing this David Lynch tribute, obviously, after the man passed away, and I did a survey with my audience, and when I sent the survey out, Beth emailed me and went, just to let you know, we're showing Blue Velvet. And I went, great. And actually, when the results came back, Blue Velvet was 4th. So actually, I was able to do the first top 3 that I wanted. But I would never, you know, to me that's just like A, being polite, B, being a good neighbour, and also, you know, it's all about us looking out for each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think as well, I think within Cornwall, it's almost a bit like an island mentality that we've all got to kind of work together, because it's whereas in sort of maybe other parts of the country you've got a wider remit. We're effectively an island. We might not have the exact. If you haven't got the skill right there to help the person to help you with what you need to help, you find someone who can wear that hat for a bit, who can do that job that you need to do. It's very much a sort of, I think, people pull together.
I think definitely there does feel like that community for me. It feels like we all need, the town needs multiple venues, and it needs multiple promoters, and it needs all of that, you know, as part of a healthy kind of artistic ecosystem. I think that, yeah, it's a small town, so sometimes there'll be an event down the road that will make us have less people here, but I think that's all part of it. And I think, you know, just having places where people can, you know, creatives can go and show their art to people, encourages more people to do it, and I think we need as much of that as possible. So, yeah.
One of the things that's come up quite a lot over the last couple of days is you know, sort of the post-COVID time, that, you know, and a sense of trying to get away from, you know, sort of the screens and things like that, but also a return to being in community with other people. And I know that, having been to a lot of your, you know, gigs here, events at the Poly, there is a sense that you each have a community that doesn't just come for the programme, but comes because of that community. So can you talk a little bit about your relationships with your audience as a community, and sort of, some of the kind of the joys of that?
We feel really supported by the community massively. I think we wouldn't be here without kind of the community support that we've had. Last year we were very close to closing. We launched a crowdfunder, and we ended up raising £50,000, £55,000, something like that. And with that money, that's how we built the pub downstairs out of what used to be the kitchen, and did the garden up, and that's kind of probably what's kind of saving us now, and hopefully helping us to turn a new leaf. And I think, seeing the same faces here a lot, and we've got a new WhatsApp group, which is lovely, and people talk about the gigs that they've been to and have like really lively discussion in there. So I think it's I'm very grateful to the community. I think it's nice that this place feels like it's everyone's place, rather than just the people that work here.
I think I'm routinely humbled by how much people care about the venue and the venues, and will tell me stories of their childhood. And obviously the Poly has been there for a long time. It's almost 200 years old, and quite often I will meet people that will say, "Oh, my first experience of theatre was being in a school play on that stage, and actually nothing's changed. We've still got the same carpet in the dressing room." But so I'm regularly, and whenever we run sort of crowdfunders and events where we're trying to very much like the banquet shop, trying to get a bit of money to do something or replace something. I'm always really humbled by the people who come out with the woodwork and put the money in.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got, I mean, I have a wonderful crowd of regulars who come to pretty much every show. There's one guy who is an artist who every show makes a prop to bring. So when we did, the first time I really encountered it was when we did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and this guy just turned up wearing a leather face mask that he'd made. And then when we did The Fly, I was doing my introduction at the front, and literally somebody was sitting there with a fly head on. And things like that, you know. And so I love that. When we did Evil Dead 2, it sounds like I do nothing but horror movies. We do a horror movie strand that's separate. So I have like the main strand on a Sunday night every month. And then we do a horror movie night midweek on a Friday night. And when we did Evil Dead 2 a couple of weeks ago, he'd made a Book of the Dead out of, you know, and gave it to me to hold. And I love that stuff. I've got a lady who comes to every show. She's been to every show apart from one. She's in her 70s and will just come no matter what. And I think the most moving one for me was when we did Harold and Maude, the old Hal Ashby movie. And I said to the audience, "So how many of you have seen this before?" And about 10 people put their hands up out of about 80. And I just went, "Well, why are the rest of you here then?" And they went, "We trust you, Pat." And if you'd said to me what was my mission statement right at the start, it was that. I wanted people to trust my taste and trust my judgment and know that if I recommend a film, they might not like it. You know, you might see it and go, "Well, it's not for me," but actually you can see why it was chosen, that kind of stuff. And, you know, I want to develop that as well. I want to like, have pub nights, and I want to have like, you know, an online community where people can come and join and just like sit and chat with each other and online, you know, that kind of stuff. I want to take it outside of not just the room, you know, make it bigger. But I want it to be like, you know, and people have made friends in there. I do the old improvised comedy thing where people basically at the start when I do my introduction, sometimes I'll just say, "Everyone stand up, turn around and say hello to the person behind you." And get them to actually just, you know, they do that as a warm-up at improv gigs very often. I just thought, back in my improv days, that's what we did, so that's good here. And so people have started getting to know each other as well, so it's actually kind of building connections, not just with me as a figurehead, but as a community.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you were saying that, I heard you talk about that earlier in terms of people coming for that aspect, the social aspect of, you know, the familiar faces, you know, and it's a space to be within community, and it doesn't really matter what's on the stage necessarily. Is that something that you've noticed in your time there that feels more recent, or is it kind of just the way the poly is?
I think it's more valued now because of post-COVID. I think, you know, it's the one thing you're not going to get sitting at home and watching it on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's that leaning into the experience.
Yeah, well, it's funny. The very first show we did, sorry, Jane Compton. The very first show that we did was this Telugu movie, RRR. That was the very first one we started with, and it came out on Netflix the same week. And my best friend Phil came to the show, and his partner couldn't come, so they made a little deal where as the film started in the cinema, she put it on Netflix, and he came home raving about this experience and this film and how amazing it was. And she went, "Oh, I turned it off after 20 minutes, it was shit." And it was purely, I think, down to that experience of being not in, you know, not having that collective experience, you know, and watching it at home on your own.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think similarly to what you're both saying and what you were saying before about, you know, people being in the dark, having a collective experience together. I feel like there's something that, for me, sometimes it feels like when you're at a gig, it has a, you know, like a semi-religious element.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, as a society now we're kind of losing that kind of religious habit. Is the word I'm not looking.
Well, habit's a good word when you're talking about religion, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, having something to replace that you know you're having a transcendental moment, or you're seeing something that you hate and everyone hates it, you know, but you're all in the room together, kind of having similar or differing experiences, and you can have it out about it afterwards, and yeah, I think that's really important. Yeah,
and I think it certainly feels, which again why to sort of end with this, is it feels the despite the challenges, which we're very aware of and which Natalie sort of talked about in her talk, it feels like that is very much available here in a way which just feels so rewarding. It feels like there are so many different, obviously you're 3 representatives, but you're not the only people doing this work, not even in Falmouth, or but that is an energy which exists here, which I think is really exciting. That there is that kind of resistance to the obvious challenges, and no one's saying, "Oh, actually, I can't bother."
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, I just want to say thank you very much for joining the conference and joining us today. And I don't need to tell you all to support their amazing venues, but yeah, please thank our guests for talking so lovely about this. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. And now, just for some closing remarks, I'd like to invite Professor David Pryor from Falmouth University.
Thanks very much, Arthur. So I'm a bit of an imposter because I was invited on, was it Wednesday night? Thursday night. I got a bit of free pizza. And then I wasn't able to come on Friday for the talk. So I've only been here today, but I have been here nearly all day. It's been an incredible day, and I'll just start with the keynote from Natalie that reminded us that cultural work is real work. And that was a really nice segue into hearing these organisations that do that work on our behalf in Cornwall and make sure that this stuff happens. It's probably never been a tougher time to do it, working in venues like this, and I've said the same about working in universities. It's never been a tougher time to be retaining that criticality, to be retaining that commitment, to be working within arts practices. And that cultural work that Natalie referred to is so important to us better understanding the world and making the world a fairer, more just and imaginative place. But it's some of the people that we've heard today that help us do that. So thank you very much. I've just noticed that one of the key organisers is outside. She's outside all day. Let's just make sure she comes back in. Whoa! Because some of that cultural work is the people that made this happen. So, Kat Flint-Nicol, Professor Neil Fox at the back there, Julie Ripley, probably lots of other people I don't know about, but huge amount of work goes into this. Johnny Lamb. Of course, how could I forget Johnny Lamb? And actually, that was my first experience today, was just coming in and listening to Sam and Johnny interview Adrian Utley, and that safe space of them talking about the very real expertise that goes into the work that they do, and then a really rich conversation between Adrian and Mark Jenkins later, where they're wrestling about the different ways in which they deal with materials and so on. That was incredible, amazing day. But thank you, Kat, thank you, Johnny, thank you, Neil, thank you to the Cornish Bank for hosting today, and yeah, talk to you all soon.